The environmental issue I decided to cover was acid rain. Actually causes acid rain. Emissions from cars, factories, and other human activities enter the atmosphere, and the carbon dioxide from the emissions reacts with the moisture in the air and makes the water acidic. Now, in a reaction that carbon dioxide is being released into the air, it combines with the water and produces carbonic acid. But these reactions can also happen with nitrogen, in where nitric acid is produced, HNO3, and sulfuric acid is produced, H2SO4. Biological effects of acid rain. Aquatic life. Acid rain lowers the pH of lakes and other bodies of water, such as oceans and rivers, to a point that may not be suitable for the development of species young or the adults of the species themselves. In a very extreme case, the adults will not be able to survive, but most of the time, if the pH is altered even slightly, then the eggs and young of fish, for example, cannot survive and develop. So acid rain also removes the minerals from the soil that plants need to survive and thrive. At high elevations, acidic fog may even strip away leaves and foliage a tree needs to photosynthesize, rendering them weak and unable to survive. So if a plant cannot photosynthesize, then obviously they cannot produce sugar for themselves or oxygen for the rest of the living organisms, which we will cover later in the presentation. And nitrogen pollution. Acid rain also contains high levels of nitrogen that, when introduced into the ocean, can kill fish and shellfish in our coastal waters. So, as mentioned earlier, the acid rain can also produce nitric acid, and so, which in this case would produce nitrogen pollution. Effects of acid rain. So, acid rain can peel paint off buildings and corrode steel and statues, especially those made of limestone or marble. So this damages history and culture, because if you have a really important monument in your city, but it's been destroyed by acid rain, you can't really get that back. I mean, you can rebuild it, but the original work of art is lost and gone at this point. And so, pictured, I have the cleaning and refurbishment of the Jefferson Memorial in DC. As you can see, the acid rain has corroded the where the stone meets, so the inner lines of it, and they're having to go through and clean that out. And they actually had to add scrolls and everything to the structural support because the acid rain had damaged the dome so much. So those scrolls were not originally in place when it was built. Locally. Since Georgia's not very densely populated as a whole, or like a huge metro area with factories and cars, so Georgia as an entire state is neither densely populated or a lot of factories with emissions and everything. So acid rain is not a huge, doesn't affect us that much, but the nitrogen pollution brought on by acid rain does. So because of nitrogen pollution, Georgia's fishing industry has declined over the years, but several fisheries and hatcheries have been built to combat this issue. For example, pictured is the trout hatchery that we now have in Cumming. Acid rain affect other parts of the world. So acid rain has caused a significant rise in cases of clinical asthma in highly industrialized countries like the UK and Germany. So places like the UK and Germany, and a lot in Eastern Europe, and Europe as a whole really, have huge problems with acid rain, whether it be damaging of architectural infrastructure or asthma, health issues. So as you can see, the UK, England, has greater than 10% of their population has clinical asthma, and Germany is more than 7.5 to 10% of their population has asthma as well. So this is caused by acid rain because of the pollutants and smog, which is another issue, but the underlying issue is acid rain in this case. Rain affect us globally. Acid rain disrupts ecosystems and renders trees unable to photosynthesize, prohibiting them from taking in carbon dioxide and producing oxygen. This leads to an increase in greenhouse gases, which in turn prompts global warming. So because of the acid rain and acidic fog, minerals are stripped, leaves are stripped from the trees. They cannot photosynthesize, they can't produce sugar for themselves, and they can't take in our CO2 and produce oxygen for us and other living organisms. So the greenhouse gases build up in the atmosphere and, of course, causes global warming. We know this. It's being done to combat acid rain. In 1990, the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, started the acid rain program, and this puts a cap on the amount of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide that factories release into the air, which in turn reduces the amount of sulfuric and nitric acid that is created by acid rain. And scientists have also discovered a way to wash coal to remove some of the excess sulfur before it is burned and used. Now, not all of the sulfur is removed, so this isn't entirely a solution to it, but it at least minimizes the damage that is done. What do you do as an individual to combat acid rain? Renewable energy. So instead of using fossil fuels, use renewable energy like solar, wind, or hydroelectric power. These options are renewable as they won't run out like coal and natural gas and other fossil fuels will. They also, of course, reduce carbon emissions. You can also choose to invest in cleaner cars like electric cars, or you can just buy a bike and bike everywhere or walk everywhere if you live in close distances of areas. Another one that's not listed is you can use public transportation if that's an option for you, because that also reduces a lot of carbon emissions, because a lot of trains are electric trains, and buses, of course, release emissions into the atmosphere, but it's not as much because a bus can carry more than 5 people. These are my sources if you would like to look at them, but I'm sure you won't, so bye, thank you.